Belize Watch. Knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
In this edition of Belize Watch Revisited, we look back at our show which aired on November 9, 2010. The show focused on the Right Honorable George Price, Belize's first premier, prime minister, and declared national hero. In the wide-ranging interview, which was conducted at his home in Belize City, he spoke about his family, growing up in Belize City, how he got involved in politics, and the road to independence. We will have that conversation after we hear from our partners, Honorable Kevin Bernard, the Barry, and Shell Belize Limited.
In the heart of the Orange Walk East constituency, a new chapter of progress and connectivity is being written. Under the visionary leadership of the area representative, the Honorable Kevin Bernard, and in partnership with the Ministry of Public Utilities, Energy, Logistics, and E-Governance, we gather here today to celebrate a monumental achievement. Through a remarkable collaboration with the International Cooperation and Development Fund of Taiwan and the Government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, we stand witness to the inauguration of not one, but two Digital Connect Labs in the Orange Walk East constituency. 3 years ago, the village of Santa Marta faced a significant challenge. There was no telephone connectivity, leaving its residents isolated from the digital age. But today, thanks to the relentless efforts of the Honorable Kevin Bernard, a transformation has taken place. A smart tower was erected, bridging the gap and bringing the power of communication to Santa Marta. And now, in a remarkable step forward, we proudly unveil a brand new digital lab where the entire community will have access to cutting-edge technology and digital resources. This digital lab will empower the residents of Santa Marta, opening doors to education, healthcare, and countless opportunities for growth. As the People's United Party government propels us into a new digital era, Santa Marta shall not be left behind. But the story doesn't end there. As the sun sets on this monumentous day, we turn our attention to Carmelita Village, also nestled within the Orange Walk East constituency. With great joy and enthusiasm, we celebrate the inauguration of yet another Digital Connect Center. Once again, the power of digitalization reaches the people, bringing them closer to a future of limitless possibilities. As we witness the birth of a digital revolution in the Orange Walk East constituency, let us embrace this moment with hope and enthusiasm. Together, we shall create a future where no community is left behind, where connectivity becomes a catalyst for growth, and where the power of technology truly transforms lives. Welcome to the digital age.
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange Rock, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Feel less.
Now, Mr. Price, let's talk a bit about you and your family.
Well, my family the father was William Cadle Price, and my mother was Irene Cecilia Escalante from Orange Walk Town. But my father's background, apart from being our background from Belizean, it was from Jamaica.
Okay.
I think his people were there. And his background, is strange to say, was from the garrison at St. George's Key.
Okay.
Those in charge, Mr. Quilter, he was the one. That's how we got all this information about the garrison in
That's
St. George's Key. And I stood at the spot where they were and could see the entrance of the reef, the opening in the reef.
Okay.
So when they were talking about St. George's Key and St. George's Key, we held the papers right here of the garrison that was there.
So,
And the manager, the Marquess of something like Newcomb or something like that. But we got in connection through the quilters. The quilter was one of their, like his, how should I say it, one of the rulers
Okay, one of the key.
And his people went to the boom. That's where the quilters went. And my old aunt, Miss Farmer, she was a quilter.
Okay.
So I was, while they were talking so much about St. Charles Key, I stood right there and had all the papers in it. Of the garrison.
Of the garrison. What do you recall of those papers that you have?
I recall they were there for a long time under that paper in a chest, ready to be used when it was necessary. And when we wanted to get it off my hand to Tony Saturday. Yes, that was. And the other one was to Hilly Martinez and his wife. They got all those papers. And you'll see it now and then when it comes out.
Okay, so those are properties on St. George's Key that you said that the family owned. No, tell me about your mother, the Escalante side.
They came, from Bacalar.
Okay.
There was this Indian rebellion.
The Garan Castas, no?
And they had to flee from there. And that was my old grandmother. And they went to live in Daly Street. Old Mrs. Escalante. Colon, I think her name was. But an old elderly lady. So I have that relationship with that side and the other one with the Prices, the quilters.
Quilters.
And of course, we're all mixed up with the population here. Can't get away from it, you know.
Exactly.
They'd like to jump the fence so much.
Belize is a big melting pot. Now, what was it like for you growing up in Belize? What was life like at the time when you were a little boy growing up in Belize?
It's a little world, but it was at the time of the great worldwide epidemic, the Spanish flu, and people were dying on the street. So I spent most of the day right here in this house, and they wouldn't let me go out, but people were dying on the streets. So it was the time of the Spanish flu. And I think Dr. Houston held a joke that they went to him, and he said, go out and drink, get drunk. That's the only way, there was no cure for it. So old Dr. Houston, that was his recommendation to the people who went to him. But this was my sort of secluded place. I didn't know what was going on most of the time. I stayed right at home.
How old were you when you had these memories of the Spanish flu?
It was when I read them, maybe 10 years ago.
About 10 years old.
But as a boy, I heard the people saying how the people used to die on the street. And how things were deadly out there. The people were dying. But it never occurred to me this was like happy home here, this little house, paradise. It was.
This is the house you were born in, Mr. Price?
Born right upstairs. And lived in it all my life. I am about the only person in our family who have lived in this house all my life. I've lived nowhere else.
Even when you were Prime Minister and you had access to other residences, you still chose to stay?
Right, yeah. Not one night I spent in the Premier's Lodge. Not one night.
Oh, wow. Now going back to growing up, tell me about going to school and what you recollect of going to school and some of the friends you went to school with.
My first school was to send me to St. Catherine's Academy, the school of my sisters. And I went in one of the classes, there were mostly girls, but I was, and a few boys, like it's going to a school with the infants. I was there for a year or two. Then after that, I crossed over to what we call the public school, right next door. They were on between Gabriel Lane and the sea. And the St. Catherine's Academy was like that to the sea on the right, and the schools, the public schools, were to the left. And where the boys had their classes were on the sea, the building near the sea, and the girls near the street, the Gabriel Lane. And that is where I went to school first in the academy, then over to the section of the boys. We were all a male school in those days, the boys in one building and the girls in another building. And that's where I did my early years of primary. And then the Jesuits at the cathedral bought the old residence of the Belize estate and produce company. Those buildings that are there today, that was their office and their storeroom where they used to live. And they used to live upstairs. But when they bought it, it became a school, the building that are there today.
That's the Diocesan Center by the String Bridge. Is that what you're referring to? No. What building are you referring to?
You cross the canal and come towards here. Those two white houses that look alike, where the school is.
Holy Redeemer. Holy Redeemer. Oh, the buildings at Holy Redeemer. I think
that is the school now, Holy Redeemer. We used to belong to the Belize Estate and Produce Company.
I didn't know that it belonged to the Belize Estate and Produce Company. So I've learned something now. I thought that was always a part of the Roman Catholic diocese.
No, why did they sell them? I don't know. Maybe they were once the biggest landowners, and we used to fight them in the Belize Estate. But they got out of that and kept on the other side, the street of Northfront Street, where there was logwood, and their vessels. They had two big sailing vessels there.
I can recall that they used to do chicle right at that and
warehouse right in front of the cathedral. That's the bottom dollar. That is so. And the big yard was where they store logs. Logwood was for dyes. They used to import them to Europe.
Yes.
Then they discovered some new source of colors. They getting coloring for clothes, and that put that trade out from us, the logwood trade.
So as a boy too, you remember lot of mahogany that used to float down the Belize River, the Hallowell Creek, right?
I do, and used to walk on them sometimes. The logs floating, and they drifted out to the ship there, and they would load them in big logs too on board.
Big pieces of logs that they
That's
used
right.
that they used to load and board those
Steamers. Lift them out of the water and put them on. And they used to go to New York. That was the buyer, I.T. Williams and Sons. They were the buyer of the mahogany logs. But every log had a life of its own. Everything was written by Mr. Joe Cowie about the log, where they came from, their size, and different things about it. It was like a person. So they knew what the log was.
Keep track of everything. Yeah.
Yes, and they went to New Jersey, where they were then made into furniture and different things.
No, you finished school at Holy Redeemer, and then you went on to
St. John's College. I finished school at Holy Redeemer in the year of the hurricane, 1931 hurricane, yes. And from there I went on to St. John's College. And the hurricane, that was the end of it there.
Yeah. What's your recollection of the 1931 hurricane?
That I escaped death about 3 times in one day. The first one was at the college, the old college. The Jefferson construction company built it, but they built it cheap. There was no ferro, there was no metal in the posts. It was just stones and cement. And we saw it falling down, and we ran out because the columns were giving way, and we got out in time. and took refuge behind the seawall because the breeze was from the northwest. And then the lull came and we all got out, saw the destruction. In fact, while we were running to the seawall, we heard like thunder behind us when the building fell down and some were caught. We got out that day and took refuge behind the seawall on the sea. Then the half came, the center passed, and it was like a sunny day. And then, so when I got out, and Carl Keitel, the Keitels, my cousin, he took me to his home on Albert Street, Albert and Dean. And when the second, and while going there, I saw like a big wall, looking out to sea, I saw a big wall coming of sea. It was a tidal wave coming. And when the blowing started for the second half, hurricanes, if the center parts over here get the first half and the second half. Well, when the second half started, while I was at Miss Keitel, and the house began to shake where we were, but that house stood the hurricane. But we went down to the ground, level of the ground, to the bakery. That is where the Methodist Church fell on top of it and got out from there. That was the second escape of that day. Then I ran out. Some were caught. They were killed. But I was lucky. I came out and went to Albert Street. And that was the second experience. I had to take off my clothes, heavy shirt and pants, and just in my underwear. And the street was just littered with wires, electric wires, and I don't know how they did not even scratch. But the water was, in some places you had to swim because it was high enough. Other places you waded. That was Albert Street. Then when I got where the theater is now, used to be the Palace, there was my friend, Mr. who lived across the street here, young. He saw me and he called me in. I had on my drawers, homemade drawers, and on the shirt. That's all I had. And barefooted. Look, going back at that, I don't know how I wasn't caught up there. We went all the hours.
You were being saved for a greater purpose, Mr.
Pardon?
You were being saved for a greater purpose.
Looking at it, I escaped death about 3 times a day.
Yeah. And so you went on to St. John, the new St. John's when it was built. How
was it the transition?
The transition.
Well, I went, Ronald Young took me to my aunt, and she put on her little boy's suit on me. I was in my drawers and shirt, and sent me home. That was a part of Ronald Young. I always remember him. He brought me home that day. Then times went on, and Ronald, I don't know where he went. I think in the Mahogany Works. Yeah. But you were asking something. Yes. Then I went to school from St. John's College. No, I was there before from St. and then went to St. John's. Then I went back to Holy Redeemer. And those were the days when the school had already passed from the seaside to the River Lane. No, primary school right out there.
Okay, you're going back to primary school.
Okay.
Yeah. So 1931, and you said you were the same year you finished primary school.
Primary school, and then started high school.
But you were already at high school at St. John's when the hurricane happened. That's what I'm understanding.
Because yes, St. John's moved to there. That is how it
moved
because it was destroyed.
Yeah.
So their college was right here at the Northern Street.
You're right, on Northern Street, where the Diocesan Center now is, in that area there.
No, but more where the school building are, those 2 buildings past the canal. You go down from Queen Street to Northern Street and came here towards it. And that's where the 2 identical buildings with a iron walkway between, that was the old headquarters of the Belize Estate and Produce Company. And finished my primary school there, and then went on to St. John's College for the destruction of the college.
And then the escape with the light.
Yes, I escaped death 3 times that day.
You did the entire St. John's College, did you?
That day, oh yes,
The entire course,
Yeah.
4 years at St. John's
In
College,
4
here,
years,
here,
yeah,
here
yeah.
in downtown Belize City,
Yes,
basically.
that's right. That is so.
That was before the move to Landiva.
Before the move, but then shortly afterwards, I moved on to Landiva. Father Knapp found the land and they built there, Landiva.
When was it you felt the calling to become a priest?
To the priesthood?
To the priesthood.
It was in that here, when we were, the Jesuits of Missouri province were there. And I saw how they worked, how they dedicated themselves, and wanted to do what they were did. That urging came to me. And I decided to go to the priesthood then. And then they sent me to Bay St. Louis as a minor ceremony, minor seminary. And then when I got through with that in the 1940s, I went to the major seminary in Guatemala City. That's how I got into Central America. And was there, I did a year in Guatemala City, and I was to continue to San Salvador. But somehow they changed the curriculum that time, and there was not the next class I should go with. That's why I came back to Belize.
Now, coming back to Belize, when you arrived back to Belize, you still had the desire to continue on with your studies for the priesthood, or?
So, that is so. That is in 42, I think, from Guatemala. And they wanted to send me to a Benedictine seminary in the United States. But I told them I got enough, in so many words. So I got out of that and went to work at Mr. Turton's office.
And what was it like working at Mr. Turton's office there?
Quite an experience. These were the people I met there. This is Robert Sidney Turton. Dugar. They were like, they worked together, although they didn't, this one didn't own the firm, but it was an assistant to Mr. Turton. So Mr. Turton, Robert Dugard gave me the job from Mr. Turton. That's how I got to work with Mr. Turton. As a secretary and translator and travel companion. That's how I got that job.
How old were you when you got that job, Mr. Price?
Well, the year was 42, and I was born in 1990. Must have been 21 or so. 23, yeah.
23. 23. Very young man.
The Right Honorable George Price became Belize's very first national hero when he was presented the Order of Belize Award by Prime Minister Said Musa in 2000. We are looking back at our 2010 interview with Right Honorable George Price. In our upcoming segment, he told us how he got involved in politics and spoke about the road to independence. But first, a word from our partners, Honorable Kevin Bernard, the Barry, and Shell Belize Limited.
In the heart of the Orange Walk East constituency, a new chapter of progress and connectivity is being written. Under the visionary leadership of the area representative, the Honorable Kevin Bernard, and in partnership with the Ministry of Public Utilities, Energy, Logistics, and E-Governance, we gather here today to celebrate a monumental achievement. Through a remarkable collaboration with the International Cooperation and Development Fund of Taiwan and the Government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, we stand witness to the inauguration of not one, but 2 Digital Connect Labs in the Orange Walk East constituency. 3 years ago, the village of Santa Marta faced a significant challenge. There was no telephone connectivity, leaving its residents isolated from the digital age. But today, thanks to the relentless efforts of the Honorable Kevin Bernard, a transformation has taken place. A smart tower was erected, bridging the gap and bringing the power of communication to Santa Marta. And now, in a remarkable step forward, we proudly unveil a brand new digital lab where the entire community will have access to cutting-edge technology and digital resources. This digital lab will empower the residents of Santa Marta, opening doors to education, healthcare, and countless opportunities for growth. As the People's United Party government propels us into a new digital era, Santa Marta shall not be left behind. But the story doesn't end there. As the sun sets on this monumentous day, we turn our attention to Carmelita Village, also nestled within the Orange Walk East constituency. With great joy and enthusiasm, we celebrate the inauguration of yet another Digital Connect Center. Once again, the power of digitalization reaches the people, bringing them closer to a future of limitless possibilities. As we witness the birth of a digital revolution in the Orange Walk East constituency, let us embrace this moment with hope and enthusiasm. Together, we shall create a future where no community is left behind, where connectivity becomes a catalyst for growth, and where the power of technology truly transforms lives. Welcome to the digital age.
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, Sa Ignacio Cayo, Orange Rock, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Piles.
How did you get involved then in the political movement?
Oh, that was Eddie Austin, the big fat man. And in the early mornings when he used to stand on the veranda of Mr. Turton, he would tell me all about the union, Betson and Middleton, the General Workers Union, and got me interested in them. And that's how I knew about the union. And I joined the union and became the president of the union at one time. Then from there on, I went on more and more and more. For the next thing was to graduate and started political life by going around preparing the people for independence.
But Mr. Turton had already started some limited political life before, right? He was in the
Legislative Assembly.
Council, yeah, something like that.
I used to handle his papers and his political work. Who used to do that too was the Reverend Archdeacon Hulse. And we used to work late at the office. And I finally inherited the desk of Mr. Dugard. Next to Mr. Turton, and had a desk of my own. But by then I was a traveling companion and secretary and all his financial business. I do that. But I was still young, around 21, 22, 23.
Can you recall your debut into politics and what pushed you when I said that your first public presentation and how it felt?
It was a city council election. And 3 days before the election, they needed somebody to complete the ticket. And Mr. Fred Webster came and said, I want George to be part of that group. And he said, George, come, go right into this thing. And I went into the city council candidates on the 3rd day before the elections.
And you won?
No, we lost that one. That was 44.
Okay.
Then we went back in 47, the next city council election, and we won. And from then on, we went on until we lost it down. In 85, I think, after the big elections, that when we lost.
But you were once a mayor of Belize City, is that so?
Yes, I was mayor. I was mayor of Belize City at the time of the 61 hurricane. And I went out and I saw the big open grave, communal grave, where the people were buried. I think Father Wright's mother was picked up further west and brought there to be buried. So I was the mayor of Belize City. And I read over them, they prayed over them, and then they closed that communal grave, where the monument is still there, the new monument.
Where's that monument?
right over the grave.
The 1949, the 31st of December, the Belize dollar was devalued, and people took to the streets immediately. And you were head of all this movement. You're part of all this movement. You, along with Golson and
Against
Richardson.
the will of our electors, our representatives, against Mr. Court and Gilly Halls and them. So we had a meeting that same night, right around this table, the 31st of December, 1949. And there we intended to go for independence. And that's where the movement began, right around this table.
At that time, you had with you
Eddie Austin and Richardson and Golson and Nick Pollard. They came to the meeting. So they were here when we agreed to go for independence, right this table.
So the movement for independence started actually in the same room and around the same
Right around
table
this
here.
That table will
It's a
go
privilege.
to
This is a historical table.
go
you
to
know,
the
so.
George Place Center. Here's the table, this table.
Now, what was the meeting like? That the feeling in the meeting, if you can recall?
Anger. That we had no say. Our representatives, the governor passed the devaluation of Belize by his powers. They call it Clause 6. And the what?
The reserve powers.
The reserve powers. That's how our currency was devalued. And then we realized we have to get rid of the colonial system right around this table. And the movement of for independence began right there.
Now, what were some of the early actions that the group took when after the meeting around the table?
Big demonstrations. Big. Some of the biggest demonstrations of the Belize city. Parades, night parades, candlelight parades. So much so that when they came to receive our protest writing, the fire, and they had the mounted policemen there. Some of the marchers put the torches of fire on the horses at the rear. There was a big scene right at the gate of old government house. Then the movement began. And I hope someday to get this table to the as a museum center.
That's very important in our history. That's for sure. Very important table in our history. Just to imagine that you, Golson, and Richardson, and Pollard, and everybody sat around this table and actually started this movement that led us to independence in 1981. This really is a very important part of our nation's history. That's for sure. That's for sure. So, how did you get along then with the suppression, for want of another word, that the colonial authorities at the time heaped upon you? Because I'm sure they were not in favor of the movement in the.
But we told them plain we want to get rid of them. And towards the end, they cooperated with us.
But they give you a lot of hard time in those early years.
Oh, yes. They put them in jail. They were against, they accused them of disloyalty, the kingship and the people. We had to get them to go to Jamaica and get a lawyer. And so a lot of expenses, legal lawyer expenses.
I know Golson was placed in jail. Was that after the 7 days or something?
Both of them, Richardson and Golson, were put to jail. They never had a chance. The lawyer we thought would help us, he went right to government house and made his peace with the governor. His name was Never Soul. Nether Soul. Nether Soul went there and it was given up. So they went to jail.
No,
but that didn't kill the movement. The movement kept on.
Kept going. So it was the People's Committee in January, and then the People's United Party was formed in September of that same year.
The Feast of the Archangels. It was, I think, the 29th of September, if I remember rightly. Yes.
And you, the position you occupied, was that of secretary, right? Was one of the
secretary. Then when they were taking us into the federation, we discovered it. And when we expelled them, it was Shubo who got them out of Riverside Hall, pulled them down. And then I just became the leader. I didn't go for it. I just people told I must continue the work.
Now, looking at the federation, what was it that you did not like about the federation?
It was another colonial system. We didn't like it. And we were right, because afterwards the federation didn't last long. They all got out of it and began the Carifta, Caribbean something.
And you supported Carifta subsequently?
We were interested in it. And we actually got it later on at Carifta, that's right.
Now, this split in the PUP happened in 1956 at Riverside Hall. What's your recollection of the Riverside Hall meeting, the famous Riverside Hall meeting?
That our people found out that Richardson was betraying us. He was working to join the Federation of the West Indies when we were not in favor of it. And when that was discovered, they were expelled from the party up in Riverside Hall. And it was Shubo who saw that they go down the stairs and leave the building.
People were angry at them
Oh,
for
yes.
the federation.
Yes, because they joined the federation.
And,
He was working towards the federation when it was our policy not to go into the federation.
now, when you attended that meeting, did you ever expect that you would have emerged as the leader of the People's United Party at that time?
Never. Never. I thought I was the secretary to do the work. But that same meeting, they changed the federation to different organizations like the Carifta, and then we saw we could join it.
That was some years down the road.
About 2 or 3 years afterward,
Down
yeah.
the road.
Yeah, down the road.
But I'm referring to that meeting night in 1956. And you answered me already when
They
you
were
said
expelled from the party.
when you said you did not expect to emerge as leader. Now, when you became the leader of the PUP, now, independence obviously became your vision. So
Ready for independence. Get all the groups of Belizean of people to feel our Belizeans. The Maya people in the first, then the Garifunas, no, the people is Garifuna and Granigago. Garinago, yeah. And the Spanish, everybody we got going, ready for independence. And we were ready for the independence, although they sent for the next 10 years, and they said, yes, we're ready. And that's how we went into independence.
So the driving light for you became independence. Now, in between this mix now, and I'm going back a little bit here, in 1961, after the hurricane in 1961, and the experience you told me about in 1961 of the mass graves and so, is that what prompted you to build Belmopan? Because I understand that that was already a move to erect or to build the jewel city of Mopan.
That is so. That was in our election. The determination was then to take away the government of the country from Belize City inland to Belmopan. In any way, it sort of strengthened our determination to move inland. But there was something that was on my mind a short while ago. Oh yes, in that, when they made me premier, I should really have been prime minister. But they were working on the Constitution of Independence, the law, so they had no place for me. Somebody said, give him the name of premier, following the Canadian system. That's how I got to be premier. That is the only premier in the country so far.
Yes,
Only one.
Because
the Constitution was not ready, so they had to put me someplace.
Now, I know you traveled the country extensively during the years leading up to self-government, particularly, and then independence. Yeah, what you recall of those travels, and what was it
We had
like?
to bring the people into one. The Maya, the Kerobi, the Indian, the Elementa Pedja, yes, and the Indians, the Hindus. We had to prepare all of them as one people. And then we became ready. It was then that we were ready for independence. And the other opposition said, not now, in 10 years' time. I said, now or never. And that's what time we went into independence. I became a member state of the United Nations.
Now, there were many accusations against you that you were selling Belize to Guatemala, that you were an ally of Guatemala, and so on. But then you ended up bringing Belize to independence. Now, expand on that for me. What contacts did you have with Guatemala?
And it's a strange thing. The Guatemalans understood to them we're not working to be a part of Guatemala. We have to be an independent nation. They knew it from the start. They knew it, that we would never go with them. And when the British were giving more from the Moho River to them, I opposed it and went right down to the Sarsoon. And from there we got the land in the Sarsoon. It's a strange thing. You know the whole thing. They were going to give the Moho to Guatemala, the British.
The British were going to do that?
Yes.
I didn't know that. That was what year that you're talking about, 1962?
The British were willing to give the Moho down to Guatemala. And he says, I fought them. No, we're going to get everything to the Sarsoon. And then Terence Todman came into the picture, and Terence Todman and I worked out the Sarsoon River as the base. So we got everything we were going to get. And when the British wanted to give them Moho down, we said no. It's the British wanted to give them one. They were there for it, the Moho River. Now, you're surprised to know it. No, but I don't know how Assad...
I didn't know about that.
But Assad made it public. Maybe it's not published.
It's in his book. It's in his book.
You have to read his book.
Yeah.
There was a rapport between the people, and I don't know what it is that caused it. I could go to a place and they offered me food right away. I didn't have to.
And so, but it was probably a look.
And I used to go sometimes. I chose a really well. I'll eat with this one today. And when they said, "What you eating?" Then I came back and gave me food.
You know what? I know you about perhaps one of the people who could walk into somebody's kitchen and say, "What you cooking today?" and lift up the pot and.
That is so. I used to go into the kitchen and see what they're eating and pull out the pot and everything. I used to do that.
But those efforts paid off really in creating that Belizean identity. Those traveling efforts and forging this.
They paid towards the end. That is true. That was the reason for it too. We were one people. So Belizeans. And when we went, the UDP said we're not ready for it. 10 years were too early. I said no, never. And we went to the United Nations.
But you know, I'm going a little back now to you maintain that you'll not cede 1 square centimeter. I can remember in all your speeches that I remember, you kept saying, despite the fact that they were accusing you of selling out to Guatemala, you maintained that there was not 1 square centimeter, and now you have revealed that it was in fact.
They wanted to give it, and they might have got a little bit here and there, but that is a straight out something in the river. They might have got a little bit, but I don't know yet. But that one we gave them. And they were about to give up the Moho. That's how that thing came up.
What other attempts did the British make that you totally rejected?
Well, that was one. There were several of them at the time.
The Webster proposals, for example, how did that come about?
It was a British proposal worked out with the Guatemalans, with the United States, to give them our foreign affairs. That was worked out with them, and they were going to do it. And when we found out what it was, we rejected that one. So we got the whole of Belize, entire. Even the Sarsoon, we had to straighten that one out with Terence Todman. Yeah.
Instead of celebrating the Battle of St. George's Key Day, you changed it to National Day. Why did you do that?
Because that was not the reason that we got a right to independence. What happened underneath, which I got from the papers. The Spaniards were here, and then they were at one of the keys, Lanky and Key Chapel. And they were sick. There was a case of dysentery. And they were leaving anyway. There were sick people with dysentery. And just around that time, the British were able to get a warship out there, but they were leaving anyway. And so when our people went there and ran from St. George's Key with coconut trees, that only put on a show. That didn't do anything. And we tried to counter that by calling it the National Day, because that saved us. Meanwhile, in that right below, there was an anxious around the conveyances.
But this accusation of you trying to kill the 10th, how would you respond to that?
Because the Battle of St. George's Gate was like a comedy to us. The way they put it, not that it was the slaves went there with coconut tree, boy trees.
It's just the way how it was painted. Basically, you had a problem with
yes, the way it was. But we knew what was happening on, and we had the papers. So we call it National Day. They wanted to say St. George's Key, they gave us the right to independence. Not one bit. Not one thing. We became independent because the people throughout the country wanted it. Every district of the party wanted it. That's how we got independent. We had the 10th day of September celebrations, and we were right at New Road. New Road. And a little mestizo boy, was a Spanish boy, his hat and the Union Jack, he wanted to come into the procession. He was students of St. Holy Redeemer School. And some of my companions said, no, boy, you're a Panya, you don't belong to us. And this little boy coming out to and then I realized that is a cause of contention going on. And it was then we changed it to the National Day.
All right. Now, going to independence now. Independence was on the 21st of September 1981. How was the date chosen?
Oh, it was. Prince Michael came to turn over the sub-document to us and gave it to me, and I forgot. I left it right and think about Maxey, he handed this. He got it and took it to the
how the decision, why the 21st of September for Independence Day?
I selected the day. That's it. I named the day. You had to name a day some parts, and I put the 21st. Now the reason is 21, you get it by 7 multiplied by 3. And they were magic numbers to me. 3 was the Blessed Trinity, and 7 were the 7 sacraments. So that was the 21st. In fact, I almost forgot to tell them it was the 21st. It was the night when I was getting ready to read London. I had to phone Mr. Redley. I forgot to tell you the date of independence. I was leaving. I said it's the 21st. And they accepted it right away. No problem with that.
So that's interesting. Now, the selection of our first Governor General, Dr. Dame Benita Gordon, you had to select the Governor General, right? Now, how did you go about selecting the Governor, or how did that process take place?
She stood out on my mind once before independence. I looked behind her, and there was the minute of walking and putting a whole energy into it. I said, that's the lady we need. And that's how I nominated her to be the Governor General. And I wanted to be a woman too. And I wanted to be a woman from humble circumstances. We're not going to be Mrs. this and Dr. that and that. Humble people. That's why the first senators were the two first, Ms. Daly and Senator Vasquez. They were humble people, they were domestics, so that we can govern ourselves. And we had a way to prepare the people for independence. Otherwise, many of us, it is what happened in St. George's Key today, you know. All that mockery about saving. Who own the houses? The merchants of Belize. And the poor people have to live in Fisherman Town. That's another mockery. That's why I could never have my heart in that.
So your philosophy in life, Mr. Price, has always been a more humble, person-oriented philosophy. Give me a philosophy of life.
My philosophy was the people that own the country, the people, not Mr. This and Mr. the other. Is that so? That is our philosophy. It's the people that own it. And with their support, we got independence. And there was a man from Tanzania, Salem. We must internationalize our problem. And that's how we did it, because all from the Caribbean, we went to the Donner Lines, and in the end, we got the whole world with us.
Bobby Leslie told me a stunning story about it when you decided that we must internationalize the Belize question. How you sent him as that's where the idea came from. Salem.
We must internationalize the problem. And that's how we did it.
And so you pick up Bobby Leslie, Hassan Schumann, and Shirley Harvey and send them to the United Nations.
That is true. They were there too. They did a good job there. And they had an independent secretariat. You are a member, Said Musa, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Courtney. We had an independent secretariat. We were ready for independence. We had all our, I think the Constitution was ready. Patterson helped a lot. PJ, he was a brilliant lawyer. What was he, Prime Minister of Jamaica?
PJ Patterson became Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Oh yes, we had all those people on our side. And there was one from British Guyana.
Rashleigh
Jackson, that is. We had the intellectuals on our side. That's why I could face Mr. The man, the colonial secretary, Ian, McCord, as equal to equal. I could face him. And he saw it right away. Said, you can have it when you want.
No. What was your feeling? What was going through your mind on Independence Day itself when you actually took out the articles of a Constitution, Constitution from Prince Michael of Kent?
I said no. My feeling was the problems were ours. We had to get rid of the British colonial system, and we had to deal with the opposition here. It became very clear to me that we'll have to do that. That's right. Right after independence, I toured the country, getting to know the people, getting ready for this government, self-government.
No. Your vision, can you remember the vision you had for our country throughout this entire movement? How, because I remember you kept saying, with independence, more prosperity. I can remember that particular slogan. So what view did you have for our people when you were going through all these struggles leading up to independence?
We would have got rid of this claim of Guatemala to us, that's one. We would have established some industries here to give the people work. That is why at the time we encouraged industries. We had, down south we had the pine Hercules, and we were interesting another country to come here to give industries and work to the people. But the people had to work too. That was our doctrine.
Wake up and work.
No, wake up and work, yeah. And I went around the country right after independence, village to village, to get them ready for the hard work. And the villages were all friendly to us. You go and choose where you're going to eat that day, I'll have a meal with you. So. What you're eating today, we're going to eat with you. I'll have a meal with you. That's the way we used to get into the people. But before then, we had them too. We had Idogora Fuentes, treating me as an equal statesman, had his army out there when we arrived, and giving us all this civilians.
That was in the 50s or 60s?
That was before we became independent. That's when they had toured the Central American countries. And of course, General Torrijos, with the Spanish people, the Latin American vote. We had all of them on our side. But one thing I learned throughout is all things. When you go to ask help, you must be humble. You must not pretend that you know everything. You don't know, you need the help. And that's the way to get ahead with them. The moment you go to them that you know everything, you're not getting the help. That's why General Torrijos went out his way to help us.
Now, another question that comes to mind readily talking to you is our flag, or national flag. What are your comments on our national flag? Some people say we just want to put some blue and white flag and what have you, but what are our problems on that?
We
Your
were
comments on
told by many of the old people that our flag flying from the courthouse in Parsias was a blue flag with a white circle and the coat of arms on it. And it was so. But the last one they had the Union Jack in the corner there. And what we did was took out the Union Jack and just leave the flag as it was. So it was there already, the flag. The name was already there, the settlement of Belize in the Bay of Honduras. The song was there, Land of the Gods. It was all there in history for us. And I should have made that my speech when I went to Trinidad, to the University of the West Indies for the honors they gave me. That it was all there. The name of the country, the flag was there, and even the song. It was all there. We didn't have a committee to get the name of the country or a committee to get a national anthem. No, it was all there.
Well, the flag, the red stripes were added afterwards to show unity.
Oh, yes, to show unity about the red. That's the opposition, not the government. But there was no problem in that. They accepted it too. You were there too, not you? Except they wanted to make it that big. But you had to keep them that way. Yeah.
Without a proposal, they made it that big.
So then we had an independence secretariat ready preparing for independence.
Well, Mr. Price, I want to ask you a question here. Your vision of Belize and its future today.
Well, I think everything is there for a good future. First of all, we have the Commonwealth Caribbean on our sides. And we have the Latin American SICA, that's right. So we're right in the right position, both sides. And now we have all these problems solved ahead of us. Let us get down to work. But this happens at a time when the world economy is bad. The globalization is not working. So we have to get over that. But we have everything arranged. Central America, the Caribbean, the Commonwealth Caribbean. We're in a position where we can be friends to both. We can be the key person with them, enjoying them together. And we've been lucky too. We had good people to help us to do that. Mr. Musa was one, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Courtney, and Mr. Assad Schumann. Assad played a role. They were the intellectuals. I am not an intellectual, although I have to read a lot to keep going.
I recall you saying that Belize was a bridge between, or could be the bridge between Central America and the Caribbean, and I guess that's the vision you're painting to me at this time. Right?
That is so, that is so. And they consider us that way too. We belong to the Caribbean community, the Commonwealth, and we belong to the SICA, Sistema Económica.
Finally, Mr. Price, your message to the people of Belize, your people, the people you have dedicated your entire life working for, right? What is your message to them today? And at this age, because you're 92 years old.
93.
93 years old.
Yeah.
Yes. You've lived a long life. You've dedicated that life to this country. What is the message that you would have to your people?
Well, we've done everything possible so far, that we have a good position in the world today. Let us keep it and work on it to improve economic conditions. We have it there. We can't make it any better.
In our final segment, our Belize Watch team traveled to Belmopan for a tour of the George Price Center for Peace and Development, which was opened in 2004. We will have that after this break to hear from our partners, Honorable Kevin Bernard, the Barry, and Shell Belize Limited.
In the heart of the Orange Walk East constituency, a new chapter of progress and connectivity is being written. Under the visionary leadership of the area representative, the Honorable Kevin Bernard, and in partnership with the Ministry of Public Utilities, Energy, Logistics, and E-Governance, we gather here today to celebrate a monumental achievement. Through a remarkable collaboration with the International Cooperation and Development Fund of Taiwan and the Government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, we stand witness to the inauguration of not one, but 2 Digital Connect Labs in the Orange Walk East constituency. 3 years ago, the village of Santa Marta faced a significant challenge. There was no telephone connectivity, leaving its residents isolated from the digital age. But today, thanks to the relentless efforts of the Honorable Kevin Bernard, a transformation has taken place. A smart tower was erected, bridging the gap and bringing the power of communication to Santa Marta. And now, in a remarkable step forward, we proudly unveil a brand new digital lab where the entire community will have access to cutting-edge technology and digital resources. This digital lab will empower the residents of Santa Marta, opening doors to education, healthcare, and countless opportunities for growth. As the People's United Party government propels us into a new digital era, Santa Marta shall not be left behind. But the story doesn't end there. As the sun sets on this monumental day, we turn our attention to Carmelita Village, also nestled within the Orange Walk East constituency. With great joy and enthusiasm, we celebrate the inauguration of yet another Digital Connect Center. Once again, the power of digitalization reaches the people, bringing them closer to a future of limitless possibilities. As we witness the birth of a digital revolution in the Orange Walk East constituency, let us embrace this moment with hope and enthusiasm. Together, we shall create a future where no community is left behind, where connectivity becomes a catalyst for growth, and where the power of technology truly transforms lives. Welcome to the digital age.
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are Dibari, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange Rock, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. Dibari. Get more? Be less.
Development, and I'm with the curator, is the correct word? And coordinator of the George Price Center for Peace and Development, Mrs. Elsie Alpuche. Elsie, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate your receiving us so warmly and cordially. Thank you so much.
A great pleasure having you here.
Now, this museum, this center is dedicated to the Right Honorable George Price, Belize's first Premier, Prime Minister, and national hero. When was the George Price Center established?
We opened in 2004, on his birthday, January 15th in 2004. That's when we opened.
Now, the purposes of it is obviously to highlight the life of our first national hero, the Right Honorable George Price. What about people visiting the museum? Do you have a lot of visitors coming through?
We do have a lot of visitors. Actually, right now, we are topping about 30,000 visitors per year, which is really great. But people do not only come for the museum because, yes, we do want to highlight the life of Mr. Price and the history behind it, but we also want to make sure that we continue the legacy. And so the activities that we're doing here at the center are focused on continuing the work that he started.
Now, what are some of these activities that you're telling me about?
Anything that can help a nation building, anything that can help a nation building peacefully. So we're doing, for example, programs with children, educational programs. We're helping out with the reading program. We do conflict resolution, which we feel is very important, bringing conflict resolution skills into the schools. We do some research as well, and in general, we just encourage dialogue, and that is what is the start of any peaceful development, we believe.
So you'd say that is what the theme of Mr. Price's life was, this peaceful development, conflict resolution.
Absolutely.
How would you describe it?
I would describe it as developing the people and the country in a peaceful manner. That is really what he was about, and that's what we want to honor through the museum, and that's what we want to continue through our activities.
Well, I'm looking forward to a walk through, Elsie. And
Great,
so I guess this is a good spot to start, right? With the,
Yeah.
I can remember this picture very well. You know, when I was chief broadcasting officer, this is in '83. This is a picture I had up in my office. This is, you know.
Yeah, I love this picture, and it just, to me, it shows a straightforward, honest man. That's what it shows for me on this picture. That's why we have chosen it as well to be in the lobby.
It's a great picture, Mr. Price. And then if we move along here,
Yeah, we have an introduction here to George Price, the man. It was written by Said Musa when he, when the book was published, Father of the Nation of Belize. I believe you have my copy, right?
I brought it for you.
Yes, great.
Brought it back.
Yeah, the book is actually out of publication right now, but it's a great book with contributions from several authors. So it gave a very good picture of who Mr. Price really is, and the things he has done for the country, his background, his philosophy. And so this is the foreword of that book, no? I very much like the quote.
That quote is that's a great quote there. Knowledge alone does not move you to action. It is a desire, the will to serve. The new Belizean man and woman is known by his or her lively interest and energetic and optimistic approach to the many problems that come from progress and growth. And that's a beautiful quote.
1965. Actually, it was Gilvano Swayze and Yasser Musa of the Image Factory that did the initial exhibit when we opened in 2004, and they were the ones selecting this. Yeah, it's a beautiful quote, and it's still applicable these days.
What I find amazing from Mr. Price's speeches, and I heard a lot of them growing up, is that they are relative today as they were when he delivered them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, the speeches that he was given, unfortunately, some of the problems that he was addressing in his speeches in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, we still do have those same problems. So, in that sense, unfortunately, yes, some of the speeches are still applicable now as much as they were then.
Okay, very much so. Then here we are seeing a young George Price who moved around the country of Belize, greeting everyone he knew.
Yeah, that's what he's very well known for. It's a beautiful picture. It speaks 1,000 words, as they say, right? Many people are asking me, who is the lady, and we are not sure.
I'm not sure who the lady is either. You know.
Unfortunately, many of those photographs that we have of him in the early days, they were not well documented as to where he was, what he was doing, if he was addressing a certain issue. We don't know. We just have to have the picture speaking for itself.
And in those days, there were no roads, no good roads for him to travel on. They were all dirt roads. You didn't even have many miles of paved road. I think we had a few miles of paved road. You know, so to reach areas like, for example, in the deep south, you had to travel by boat or through some muddy picado or something or the other to reach to the people.
We have a lot of accounts from people that traveled with him in those days, and they all mention how it was so rough, but that Mr. Price would not settle for anything less than visiting everybody and speaking to everybody and taking notes, right? While he was talking to people.
He believed in taking notes. He had a lot of papers always stuck in his pocket, and would take notes on everything that they would tell him. And then over here, before we go into the museum proper, this is the flag that was flown at Independence on even 1981. Right. Okay.
It's a very historical piece. We're very proud to have that here in the center. It was kept in the Price family for many years, and when the center opened, Mr. Price donated it to the center for display here. So yeah, the very, very first flag that flew over the independent country of Belize. When we have classes coming in here, I always make sure that I give an introduction as to what the children are going to see in the museum, and we always start off with the flag. And of course, everybody knows. I would ask them, who knows what this is? They all know the Belizean flag, but when I ask them who knows who is Mr. Price, Mr. George Price, you would have maybe one or two hands going up. So I think it's sad, really.
That is sad,
but that's why we're here, because we want to make sure that we teach children about who he was, what he has done, who he is. So, yeah.
So this is a flag, and it's right here in the case. Yeah. The flag was the very first flag hoisted over the independent country of Belize at midnight, September 1981. The ground of Government House in Belize City was plunged into darkness. The Union Jack was lowered. When the spotlight flooded the flagpole, there flying proudly was the Belizean flag. Prime Minister George Price proclaimed, and maybe I should read this, Elsie, if you don't mind. I've always liked what this here. We dedicate this new flag of independence to the people and government of Belize, secure in its sovereignty and owner of all its territory. As a pledge of national unity, the former blue and white Belizean flag, the flag of the revolution, has evolved into the blue, white, and red flag of the new independent state of Belize. May this symbol of unity also be a pledge of our continuing determination to dedicate ourselves to hard and productive work as we develop and organize our resources to sustain and serve the welfare of our people. Let the flag of an independent Belize be also assigned to all our neighbors, that we accept the responsibilities, the opportunities, and the rewards of freedom, and that we commit ourselves to preserve and promote the peace, stability, and prosperity in the region of the Caribbean and Central America. May this flag be a pledge of our recognition and our gratitude to all who have helped and worked with us to achieve this just objective for which we daily prayed. To Her Majesty's government and to the British people, to our international friends and allies, to all and everyone, it is our flag. May we keep it, love it, and guard it. Long live Belize. And that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was beautiful, huh?
And this is the flag.
I often watch it on the in the archives. We have the footage of the raising of the flag. I often watch it. It must have been such a great moment. You were there, right?
Moment. Unfortunately, I was ill. I was at, but I had worked all the way up until Independence, almost Independence Eve. When I fell ill, I was scheduled to be there. I was scheduled to be MC on Independence Hill when the instruments were being handed over and everything, but I was ill, and there had to be a substitute for me. But I can remember listening to the broadcast at home because there was no TV at the time. I listened to the broadcast at home and I cried and I cried and I cried because I couldn't be there. I always remember that. I just cried, and it was like I wanted to be there, But I made sure I haven't missed an Independence Day ceremony since. Whether it's here or abroad. And I've emceed almost every one of them since then.
Yes, when we opened in 2004, we had a very small exhibit on Mr. Price. And over the years, we have developed this until in 2008, I believe it was, we opened this permanent exhibit, which is what we have here in the museum now. This exhibit was curated by Gilvano of the Image Factory and myself. Together we worked on this. And it's a great experience, if I must say myself. Also, our visitors book is always giving us an indication as to what kind of an experience this was for people. Some people that had never heard of Mr. Price, tourists that are coming here, and once they see what is here, they always comment, what a great piece of history and what a great person this was.
This is piece of Belize's history, very important part of Belize's history.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because we're celebrating next year 30 years of independence, right? And this is the man who
this is the man that was at the forefront.
And he was at the forefront of that independence.
He's always very careful also to say that he did not do it
alone.
by himself. He's
Yeah,
a very humble
that.
man.
Yeah, he said, did not do it alone. He always said
But
that.
he was definitely the person in charge and the man in the forefront. So
Well, he received the flag. That tells you the story, right?
there you go.
Okay. What?
So whatever we have in the museum here is more complementing the documentary that we play for visitors, because that's usually what they start with as a museum experience. They look at the documentary, which give a 20 minutes compact timeline of what happened when Mr. Price was born, all the way to the point that he became our national hero and when he stepped out of politics. So they watch that first, and everything else in the museum is complementary to that, to show some of Mr. Price's characteristics, what kept him going, some of the major events in his political life and in his personal life is what we're highlighting here in the museum.
Right. He told us about this in our interview and about his account
of the
1931 hurricane. He remembers
where
that
he
vividly.
nearly lost his life. Yeah, and people love to see this as well as a piece of history. Also his family, his mom and dad are highlighted here. The house that he grew up in and that he still lives in,
Still lives
3
in this
Bigstock
house,
Street.
yeah,
It looks very different now because of the hurricanes that have, and of course,
The
I think
verandas
because
are
of
gone.
all the buildings next to it now. But it's still the same house. And this is something really to give visitors a first-hand idea of what Mr. Price was as a prime minister. Some of them are really funny because he, you would say micromanagement, but I would say he was on top of things. You know, he would write people, for example, Recondef, and he would tell them, listen, there are too many houseflies in Belmopan, do something about it. And if there were still the same number of houseflies a week later, he would write them back to say, well, what have you done, you know? So, yeah, he was on top of things. He would write, for example, when he would see a flag that was tattered and torn,
he would write
you know, that he would not be happy with, and he would write to tell you, well, do something about this, so...
I like this one to the CEO of the Reconstruction and Development Corporation. Their CEO, when will the corporation carry out the policy directive that the grass be cut, the cut grass be removed from the site? This is not being done. Recently, grass was cut in the business section of Belmopan and was left on the ground. It looks untidy. Sincerely, George Price, Prime Minister. You gotta tell her the hurry go cut, move the grass. Right?
Yeah.
But that's what
All this type of
he
letters.
observed. He was very observant, you know.
Yeah.
He was very observant. He observed everything. Right?
Yeah. And these
Last night there were sewer odors in the vicinity of Belize House, Belmopan. Please ensure that the pumping station is working.
And I would imagine if you would receive a letter like that from Mr. Price, you would be on it right away, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to receive a second letter
No, not a
reminding
second
you.
letter at all. You know, but that shows he looked into every little detail and took care of it. But yet
it's
he had
amazing.
massive delegation ability because he delegated a lot to a lot of people.
Yeah, I always find it amazing that he was at this micro level, but he was on the macro level as well. I guess you would find him at the United Nations one day, and the next day writing a letter to Recondef, you know, saying that the city doesn't look too tidy, do something about it, right? It's really amazing.
Very amazing indeed. And okay, so this would be. I think we need to start
right
from here.
From the house
Oh,
that he
from the
grew
house.
up in, and
Okay.
his family.
So that's a family at 3 Bigstock Street for the 1931 hurricane, and the very house he still lives in.
The very house that the People's Committee was formed, the very house that he now still lives in. That's a landmark in itself, huh?
It is a landmark, and it should be preserved as a landmark because that is where Philip Golson, Lee Richardson, George Price, I can't remember the name of all at this point in time standing here, but all the people, Nicholas Pollard and all of those men got together in a room in that same house and started the People's Committee, which became the PUP, which eventually led the country to independence. You know, and as we know, even from those beginnings, you could say the UDP started, because if you want to look at it that way, because the NIP, Philip Golson eventually broke off from the PUP, from the
Right.
NIP, but the whole national consciousness was raised in that very same house.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm wondering it.
The political movement system in Belize was its
Yeah.
beginnings to what happened in that room.
Mhm.
Mm.
It should be preserved at all times.
Of course,
Mm.
of course. You know, it has blossomed into a active two-party system. Right?
And we have some pictures of a young George Price.
Mhm.
You don't see that too
Too
often, no?
no.
You see him in politics, or you see him visiting people, but these are some of his early pictures. Of course, it was Miss Meg Craig that helped us in getting
In
some of
getting
those
some of those
early
pictures,
pictures,
yeah.
right? She's an avid collector of all kind of things, among which family pictures.
There was graduating from the St. Augustine Cemetery in St. Louis, Mississippi.
Hmm. Yeah, to think that he almost became a
A
priest.
priest, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So it
a
was several
priest.
factors that made him change the course in his life, which we also highlight in the documentary. It's one would say that was God's will for his life, huh?
Yeah, that's what he says, yeah.
Yeah.
Visiting a school milk feeding program with Minister of Health, C.B. Rogers.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful picture. No?
That's a beautiful picture.
Look at all the little milk mustache.
Right. And I can remember very good the late C.L.B. Rogers as well, you know, who actually was the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Home Affairs. He was also Minister of Health, you know, for a period of time.
Yeah, unfortunately, I never had the pleasure to meet him.
You didn't meet him?
No.
He was an outstanding gentleman. I really well, he was the minister in charge of broadcasting when I became chief broadcasting officer. So I actually worked with him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for a while, you know, in that head of department.
Right.
Yeah. So, actually know him. Then the picture right behind where behind you, Hanan, is indicative of how he used to travel. How he had to travel.
How he used to
in those
travel
days.
and the importance that he used to give to agriculture in Belize. How it was important to work the land and to be able to live off the land, no? It's also a very beautiful quote. It's from one of his speeches that he gave in the Belize School of Agriculture, as it said. I see the date behind the plant there.
Let's just do this for those on radio. The Belizean soil is good ground for agricultural and forestry development. The plan is a simple one. We grow food for the homeland and we grow crops for export in order to earn money to buy the goods and services Belize needs, but which Belize does not provide. Our graduates in agriculture can better understand the demonic urge to get quick money without the necessary investment in work, discipline, savings, and sacrifice. Their experience in farming teaches an exemplary steadfastness and patience. The land must first be cleared, the soil prepared, the crops planted and weeded, the venture blessed with rain and sunshine. Then and only then the harvest is reared and sold for much needed money. George Price, Belize School of Agriculture, 1984.
It's beautiful, no?
Yeah.
And I think his vision for the agricultural sector of Belize was tremendous. You look at different productive sectors in Belize right now. None can be as constant as agriculture. We will always have the land,
That's right.
you know. Tourism is kind of finicky, you know. Tourists will come and go whenever it pleases them, but the land we will always have. And I think the vision that Mr. Price had for agriculture in Belize was really tremendous.
Yeah. Okay, I think a visit to this museum is a must for every person who would like to really understand how we came about as a nation and the person who led us into that independence that we celebrate so proudly for 30 years. Right?
I believe so, and often I believe this museum is being looked at as for tourists to come, but on the contrary, I think tourists, yes, they will learn from it, but I think for every Belizean to come here is very important. Knowing your history is a must in your life.
Is
no?
there an admission to the museum?
No,
The
it's
price?
free.
It's free?
Yeah,
Anyone can just
absolutely.
walk in and...
You can always give a donation, but
Okay.
yes, anybody can walk in and come and visit. Schools are always welcome to visit as well. Yeah.
And let's go back to the pictures on the wall here.
We have a series here of pictures of his visits throughout the country. No, again, the picture speaks volumes. No, the way that he would meet the people, meet the children where they are.
And then the mode of transportation is very interesting here.
Yeah, obviously he was visiting a Mennonite community here. And yeah, it's a very interesting mode of transportation.
Very interesting indeed. Then,
Yeah, I must say one of my favorite pictures here.
That's the middle of a road in
Middle
nowhere.
of the road and nowhere indeed.
Well, we can't say nowhere. It's up part of Belize, right? We said nowhere just.
Yeah.
But it's a
I always wonder, this little boy, he must still be alive. Look, he was so young at the time that the picture was taken. And, you would just imagine, this is the person that is leading the country. It would seem that this was before independence, no? It looks like he was still in the younger years of his political
This is pre-independence,
career. But for him to be visiting the country and then to actually decide, I'm going to stop my car because I'm assuming he was in his car. And I want to meet this little boy, I want to know what he's doing there. It's just amazing.
Then
here at the time,
Land Rover, no?
Right. And so he was first minister at the time.
This is before becoming premier. This is a very old picture here. First minister, then premier, then prime minister. Right?
Yeah. And obviously doing a tour because you see several vehicles that are about to cross the river, no? And also the expression on his face because he's really happy to see the people, right? Yeah.
Yeah. See? A genuine smile, like you were rightly pointing out, right?
Yeah.
Genuine smile. I think the other two people, genuine one is, I think it's Albert Catus, if I'm not mistaken, and the other one is Sunday Hunter, right? Yeah. Albert Catus, whom the Albert Catus building was named.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same one on this picture
yeah.
too.
So you have Albert Catus, Guadalupe Pech, young Guadalupe Pech, Sunday Hunter, and Louis Sylvester, along with George Price. So this is a very old picture because you can see Louis is very young there in that picture. Guadalupe, and of course we don't have Sunday Hunter and Albert Catus with us anymore.
I think this picture also shows like the natural leading abilities of Mr. Price. You will see a lot of pictures like that from him with people following him, and he's right there, at the forefront.
He just walked, and you had to walk to catch up with him. He would walk fast, and you just had to keep there with him. He was always energetic,
The Right Honorable George Price received the Order of the Caribbean Community for his outstanding contribution to the development of the Caribbean region. He died on September 19, 2011, and was buried on September 26 at the Lord Ridge Cemetery in Belize City after a state funeral. Thank you for tuning in to Belize Watch Revisited, where we look back at some of the stories we've covered over the years.
Belize Watch. Knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what?